Good evening, presuming that you are tuned in to WBAI on a Monday at 9 p.m. But I move around so often, I hardly know where I am, especially when I'm on recording. But this is Jim Freund. Today is actually September 22nd. It's the equinox, is it not? Just about now. And 22nd of the year 22. So it seems like an appropriate time to be speaking with Bonnie Jo Stufflebeam, who is a wonderful writer of all kinds, not all kinds of, I would say largely, and please stop and say, no, that's not it, but dark fantasy.
Yeah. Yeah, mostly dark fantasy.
Yeah,
Some sci-fi,
yeah,
some horror.
okay, fine. So all
Every now and then.
speculative,
Yeah.
almost all speculative fiction,
Oh, yeah.
as it is. And with a new book out, Glorious Fiends, and some outright horror because there's a bit of body horror here and there, which is usually just makes me cringy. But uh, but it's so popular, everybody loves it. And then occasionally I'll see something and discover, oh, that's not bad. But for the proper bio, Bonnie Jo Stufflebeam's Nebula nominated fiction and poetry has appeared in over 90 publications, such as Clark's World, Lightspeed. Ah, we added that. Uncanny and LeVar Burton Reads, as well as in 6 languages. Her short story collection, Where You Linger, was released this year, while her horror humor novella, Glorious Fiends, was just released in print with an audio edition from Recorded Books. By day, she is a narrative designer for a mobile game. She's also written an animated short for Sci-Fi's The Magicians, which I should add is remains one of my favorite shows. I've done
Mhm.
it 1 4/5 times, which is to say, I bowed out of watching the 5th season the second time
Mm.
because um, too many wet hankies.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, last episode of, 4th season is a definite tearjerker for
Oh
me.
yeah, and the music that I can't even listen to the song they
Mhm.
used at the end. Although the musical parts of that series were probably my favorite. But
You were great.
uh, what is a narrative designer for a mobile game? What does that
Yeah.
entail?
Well, yeah, so the term narrative designer is kind of funny because all the different gaming studios use it differently. So sometimes it can mean that you're a coder, and that you actually, do the programming for the game. But it usually involves some sort of writing of words, and that's the job that I have. So I write the words for a romance narrative game. It's called Chapters, and so I don't do any programming. I just do the words, I do some editing, and then I work with the other departments to put together the art, and I do QA. So I do get to play the game through and find my typos and find any programming mistakes, but that
And
is to say, it's all programmed by someone else.
yeah, and dead ends. I once got caught in some game where I was just I don't know what I was just constantly hitting my head against something and ended up in a lock room situation, losing
Oh
you know
yeah.
30 hours of gameplay.
Hmm.
So QA, quality assurance, very, very important role.
It is, yeah.
And narrative, that's something that for years I never thought of it as writing, but now you can get a Nebula Award
Hmm.
for for writing games.
Yeah, it's really exciting, and I think aren't they talking about a Hugo, adding a Hugo for that, or it was just approved or
Probably.
something
I
like
mean,
that?
uh, to me, there's a huge difference. I think not to put down the Hugo, but it is a popularity award.
Mhm,
All you have to do to vote is pay.
mhm,
That's it. You become a non-attending member, probably about $25 or something like that, and you can nominate and vote for the Hugo, and you can be at the business meeting and say,
mhm.
"We should have this kind of award," and they have something like 30 awards. The Ne the Nebula have 6,
Yeah.
and the Nebulas are voted upon only by people who are in the industry
Mhm,
and have, sold X many stories or novels, or you can be like me, an associate member,
mhm.
which is sort of a friend of the thing because I've been well. Actually, I did in the '70s write a few short stories that were only because I was working at Galaxy magazine
Oh,
when
very
Jim
cool.
when Jim Bain was the editor. And if he was shy, like a couple of pages, he would say, "Freund, 300 words in an hour." And it's like, I'm not a writer. And he says, half these people aren't writers.
Wow, that's a short story.
Well, yeah, whatever. I mean, I think one was like 1,000 words. And then
Yeah.
Bain would add to it. Or his reviews editor, Spider Robinson, would add a few things in there. And that actually made me eligible as a writer.
Very cool.
But after 10 years, that sort of expires, and so now I'm an associate member.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm excited that they're adding games. The games that I currently write are not supernatural in any way, shape, or form, so
Mhm.
they wouldn't be eligible, but
Yeah, but it's an interesting thing, and it's something that's changing the field,
Mhm.
in so many ways because I've been doing these interviews and the like for so long that one of my usual questions is, what were your first things? What got you into this? And usually the answer was, "Oh, I had a friend who was going to a convention and they dragged me along and I got into it," or I had to read Ray Bradbury for school and that drew them in. And I was doing an interview with Nora Jemisin and Kay Jemison. Uh, and not long after she had moved down from Boston and came to New York. Yes, that's down. And
Mhm.
I assume that she might have come in as a reader of Octavia Butler or Samuel R. Delany, or by reading Dark Matter, edited by Cherie Renee Thomas, uh, who's now the editor at FNSF at Fantasy and Science Fiction.
Yeah.
And her answer is no. I play D&D, or
Yeah.
I play role playing games,
Uh-huh.
that that's becoming a far more common answer as to being the gateway for a lot of people to be reading or writing.
Mhm. Yeah, I started I think one of the first fantasies that I read was Sarah Douglas's Wayfarer Redemption,
Hmm.
trilogy, and I picked it up solely based on the cover image, which was this gorgeous fantasy art, and I loved that trilogy so much that I sought out role playing, but I didn't actually start with D&D. I started with, AOL chat rooms. They used to
Oh, my.
have Yeah, they used to have this whole, role playing chat, where you could go in and there were all sorts of, like, taverns and vampire forest and, um just these little rooms, and you would go in and you would choose a character that you just made up, and um you'd interact with the other people in the chat room as that character, and you'd put in your actions that you were taking, and you put them between asterisks, and then anything you were saying out loud, you would just type as normal. And yeah, so I used to do that like all night long
Yeah,
until 4
that
in the morning every night.
yeah, that was sort of a pickup from text adventures,
Mhm.
uh,
Yeah.
the old Infocom games, which were an addiction of mine.
Mhm.
And it came to pass that I had almost everybody who wrote a text adventure on Hour of the Wolf at one time or another.
Oh, that's so funny.
Well, I liked them. They were science fiction or fantasy oriented. Douglas Adams wrote two
Hmm.
such games, and rather brilliantly, no surprise. And uh, that certainly must have been a way in for a number of people. But the fact that role playing games and the like have become such a part of the genre
Mhm.
to the point where the nebulas, now again, for me, the nebulas are like, they are the peer award.
There. Yeah, the peer award.
And the Hugo is the fan award. And
Mhm.
being a fan, I'm not about to put that down. But there's a very big difference between being a Nebula nominee and a Hugo nominee. Speaking of Spider Robinson, he wrote a short story that consisted of nothing but puns. It was a Callahan's time crossing saloon story, and in fact, I'm a character.
Oh, very cool.
I'm an off-stage character because one of the chief characters is a talking dog, and the solution for the dog, what's he going to do with his life, is that he gets to take over my show. And the story was called Dog Day Evening and all that. And Spider's a brilliant reader. You don't even realize he's reading. It's like he's telling a story and he captivates you. Harlan Ellison had a similar talent. And because Spider went around to every convention in the country and read that story, it was not only nominated, but it won the bleeping Hugo Award.
Oh, wow, very cool.
It's
And
not,
you're in it.
and I'm sort of in it. I'm off stage in it.
Yeah.
Uh, yeah, and you got the time of my show wrong. He said it was 4 a.m. No, it was 5 a.m. The first 40 years was 5 a.m., which is why Hour of the Wolf.
Mhm, yeah, that's late. That is a wolf hour.
Yeah, well, there actually is a time that ancient Swedes called Hour of the Wolf, and Ingmar Bergman made a film about that
Oh, I
in
didn't know that.
1967, and it's a vampire movie.
Oh,
You
right
can,
up my alley.
so if you can imagine an Ingmar Bergman moody vampire movie starring Max von Sydow and Lee Wuhlmann, it's called Hour of the Wolf,
Cool, I'll check it out.
and they define it. It's the morning twilight,
Hmm,
and since the show was 5 to 7, Margot, who started the show in 1971, named it that.
perfect.
And even though now I'm on 9 p.m., it's branded. I'm not giving it up.
Mhm.
If it
Yeah.
if it were at noon, that would be the name.
Well, wolves get older, go to bed earlier.
Yeah, exactly. Curl up on the mat
Yeah.
and all that. And I had a reason for getting off on that tangent. Um,
Games.
games, partly games. Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
But
Games, Hugos, Nebulas.
yeah, yeah, and all the various awards. How did you transition from, or did you transition from games to prose?
Oh, yeah. Well, I got my games job because I wrote prose. So,
Oh, okay, very good.
yeah, so that was actually a bonus, and I got that job during the pandemic, so it was like, one of the very few positives that came out of the pandemic was, of course, all of these companies starting to accept remote work.
Yeah.
And I work for a California company that opened up to remote work during the pandemic, and I reached out to them, and they like having professional writers working on their staff. So
As well they should.
yeah.
It makes a difference.
Yeah.
Naomi Novik, who astute
Mhm.
fantasy readers know for her Temeraire series,
Mhm.
Her Majesty's Dragon and the like, uh, or His Majesty's Dragon, whatever. It's Napoleonic Wars and Dragons. Uh,
Mhm.
really great series. Optioned by Peter Jackson, who didn't do a darn thing with it, I'm afraid.
Oh, bummer.
Really is, really is.
I haven't read that one, but I loved Uprooted.
Yes, that's a very good one. But these others were her first work. It's a total of 5 books, and well worth the read. Very funny,
Mhm.
and if you like Horatio Hornblower meets dragons kind of thing, and each captain has their own dragon, their own rapport, and the dragon may or may not get along. At any rate, before Naomi was writing that stuff, she wrote Neverwinter 2,
Okay. Is
which
that that's a game?
that's a large RPG.
Mm.
That's those are the ones that I like,
Mhm.
where I think they're called more than RPGs now, but these are the graphic games where you can where you're free to go wherever you want,
Mhm.
and they're non-playing characters. And this particular one, not being an online game, is so you're the only character that makes decisions, although others may be programmed
Mhm.
after you. But they have plots, and,
Yeah.
and that was her entry.
Yeah, that's cool. Yeah, I love a good RPG. I don't have as much time to play them because, of course, they take so long.
Yeah, I don't either anymore, even during the pandemic when I should have had
Mhm.
plenty of time to noodle around. Um, and there are a lot of good games coming up nowadays. And there are a lot of good writers like you getting involved with them. Carlos Hernandez has been doing some and is now getting the opportunity to uh, write books based on his own RPGs, which I
Oh, that's really fun.
yeah, think is a great idea.
Yeah.
So, so that will take us back to then what compelled you to start writing
Mhm.
and why speculative fiction.
Yeah, I think it's just because non-speculative fiction bored me. It was like, if I think a lot of speculative fiction writers and readers, we have imaginations that kind of are boundless in a lot of ways, and so being restricted to this reality and things that happen in this reality, it feels kind of confining. And
Yeah.
so that's how it always felt to me. It was like I live in this world, I get to interact in this world, and that's great. But like when I'm writing, I want to be able to expand and just let my imagination run wild. And
Mhm.
maybe that's partly, like the media that I watched as a kid. I liked the X-Men cartoons and Captain Planet, and of course the RPGs, the role-playing chat rooms, and
Yeah.
Sarah Douglas and all that good stuff.
Yeah. Uh, and as I said earlier, I started with the text adventures because
Mhm.
I think with my earliest computers they weren't graphics capable.
Yeah.
So this is what you had, and they were fun. And of course, as themselves would advertise, they had better graphics. Just like I say in radio drama, we have better
Mhm.
graphics. You
Yeah.
know, I got a recording of George Lucas explaining why the graphics of a radio drama we produce on radio, duh, why a radio drama has better graphics than Star Wars.
Mhm. I think it's interesting to think about that from a horror perspective. Like, I I feel like describing or seeing the horror, right, is so much less scary than what we can come up with in our brains.
Yeah, exactly. The suggestion of it
Yeah.
means that the reader, using their mind's eye, is going to imagine what's more horrifying to them.
Mhm. And they put a lot of themselves in it.
Yeah, exactly. Puts you in the place.
Mhm.
Lucas would talk about what it took to make a great planet, a beautiful planet, and everything that involved and how much money it cost. And then he said, "Now close your eyes. Now see a beautiful planet." Oh, that's even better, isn't it?
Yeah.
And that's always been it for me. And I grew up with modern radio drama, which is to say, starting, which is what brought me to WBAI in the first place, because they had writers like Theodore Sturgeon and Samuel R. Delaney and Thomas Dish and Joanna Russ. So when I started as a volunteer there at age 13, these were the people I was meeting.
Yeah.
And you meet those people, you don't get out of it. And umpteen years later, I won't do the math. Uh, umpteen years later, it has stayed.
Mhm.
Uh, but I don't write. I don't. That's not in my talent field. Audio
Yeah.
is really where it's at.
Well, honestly, I prefer reading to writing, so
Uh-huh. And what do you like to read?
I'll read pretty much anything. Right now, I've been on this horror kick because 'cause I've been writing a lot of dark fantasy and horror, but, I've been reading a lot of Grady Hendrix lately, which, obviously, he writes from the very humorous horror perspective and has a lot of satire in his writing, and I think that the kinda lighthearted nature of it was appealing to me when the news was a little bit less lighthearted, and we were being inundated with so much of it stuck at home over the last 3 years. What else have I been I've read Stephen Graham Jones recently. Kelly Link, though, is one of my favorites of all time. It was reading her short stories that really excited me when I first started learning about genre. Because
Mhm.
when I first started writing, I kind of
And
thought I would.
she's somebody who breaks genre in
Oh, yeah,
so many ways.
absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, when I first started writing, I thought, like, oh, I knew very little about the speculative fiction world. I knew that there was epic fantasy, and I knew that there was space sci-fi, and
The
I
space
didn't know.
fantasy is a good term.
Yeah, 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 and
And Star Wars is not science fiction.
yeah,
It's
space opera.
fantasy.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I didn't know that there was a lot in between, and so I was gravitating towards magical realists like Gabriel Garcia
Mhm.
uh, Marquez and Isabel Allende, and then I actually got my MFA at Stone Coast, and I enrolled in the literary track, and I met some some sci-fi writers like on my first day, and they were
There
asking me who I like to read, and I was telling them, and they were like, "Oh, you're a sci-fi writer," and I had no idea, and so they recommended a bunch of Tachyon
heck yeah.
anthologies, and Kelly Link was in one of those,
Yeah.
and when I read her work, it blew my mind, and I was like, "Oh, uh-oh, I have not nearly explored speculative fiction." So I
Yeah.
started, consuming it at a rapid rate.
Yeah. It was Jacob Weissman of Tachyon
Mhm.
who advised me that, oh, we prefer independent press rather
Oh,
than
yeah, yeah,
war press,
yeah.
because he wouldn't mind finding himself on a bestseller list, something he's
Mhm.
published. So
Oh, yeah, and, I mean, those anthologies are so great, they deserve to be on a bestseller list.
yeah, they really do. And
Mhm.
he's published some brilliant stuff, including stuff by Michael Bishop and all that. So
Mhm.
there you go. Um, Now, how did you end up writing this really unique, bizarre entry for the TV series The Magicians?
Yeah,
Which
that
which
was
I should mention is one of my, favorite series of books and favorite fantasy TV shows.
me too. I had read the books, and I had watched the series, and I loved both of them, um, so much that I saw this listing for the Magicians contest. It was a writing contest, and it was actually put on through Wattpad, which is more of like an indie writing, website that a
Mhm,
lot of, indie writers like to post on, and, so I signed up and I read the description of what they wanted, and it was basically what they wanted was a story of one of the times when the beast won. So one of the time loops before the time loop of the story and the show, or of the series and the show. And so I just immediately felt inspired by that prompt, and did some rewatching of the show and poked around, and um, started thinking of ideas, and this idea to write a story about queerness in The Magicians kinda came to me because Elliot's there,
mhm.
and, I wanted to write about, a lesbian in The Magicians, basically, who befriends Elliot, and, so that's what I did. I wrote this short called Party Tricks and posted it, and, I won the contest. So Lev Grossman and the other editors, chose it, and I got a nice prize, and even more exciting, they made it into an animated short
Yeah,
that was
which is adorable. I was
yeah,
rewatching it, yesterday,
yeah,
matter of fact, narrated by Hale Appleman,
it
who's
is. Yeah, they got
Elliot
Elliot.
too.
Yeah, they got
Well,
Elliot to read it.
not the lead character, he is my favorite character.
Mhm, same. Um, and then they did a funny thing. They asked me if I wanted to be the model for the main character, and,
Mhm.
so I was a little hesitant at first. I sent them a message and I said, "How bloody are you gonna make it? Because I don't know if I wanna see, like, my throat, cut
Yeah.
open or anything." And they said, "We think you'll be fine." So I agreed to do it. And so I'm the face of my
Yes.
own short.
Yes, and, and it's really nice, and then, it's sort of an audio book with basic animation,
Mhm.
and,
Yeah.
but to me, it was an extension of that world, sort of like how they had the unannounced extra episode of The Sandman. It was like,
Mhm.
oh, it's over, and then, ooh, there's a little something extra.
Yeah. And it was very cool that Lev Grossman was one of the judges. So I got to meet him at Comic Palooza, and we
Mhm.
chatted for a bit after that.
Yeah, very nice guy.
Mhm.
Very nice guy, and a bit of a scholar on his own field.
Mhm.
Um,
Definitely.
yeah,
Smart guy.
but so has that given you the impetus, the idea of writing in other genres other than prose?
Yeah, well,
Because you
maybe
have a
not.
leg up there.
Yeah. Um, I don't ever wanna write for well, I shouldn't say never, but I don't really have the desire to write for TV or movies or anything. Honestly,
Radio,
I work with a
I
lot of
suppose
screenwriters.
radio,
Yeah, 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 radio.
which is I say radio, but right nowadays, audio drama, I have to edit 6 audio narratives a month.
Mhm.
So
I
there's a
would absolutely write for a podcast. Yeah, I did a project. And I indie funded it on Kickstarter, and it's a project I did with my ex-husband, so I've kind of pushed it under the radar a little bit, but, uh, we did some audio, recordings of some of my short stories, and he was he's a musician, so he wrote music to go with it, and, we got local actors to read. them,
Great.
and I read a couple of them.
Mhm.
It was a cool little project. It's a CD, and it's called Strange Monsters, and I have about 100 copies sitting in my office.
Okay, so if somebody wanted by the way, there's a whine in the background of this broadcast. My neighbor is vacuuming. So I live in a attached houses, almost 100 years old, and
Wow.
not very soundproofed.
Mhm.
We're just lucky because we have little kids on either side of us, but they're not out of school yet. They're just
I
getting
can't hear it, so
yeah. Oh, good. Yeah, but they're it's in my headphones. So,
Mhm,
um, but you're wearing headphones too, as
mhm.
anybody watching this on the radio can see. Uh, you're writing mostly in the short form.
Yeah, and that's only because my novels haven't gotten picked up.
So you have written novels.
I have, yeah. I've been trying to publish novels for a while. The thing is I'm a very experimental writer, and I don't write the typical, 3 plot structure, and most of that is just because I didn't even know I wasn't doing that, and I kept getting feedback from, publishers that my agents were submitting to that said, "This is too unclassifiable." And finally, finally, I had an agent tell me like, "It's because you're not writing in a 3-act structure. Like you're all kind of all over the place." And so this most recent novel I've been working on, I've been trying to make it a little more traditional in that aspect, but with some, experimental flavor in
Mhm.
other areas. So I'm crossing my fingers
Yeah.
for that one.
Well, I mean, as long as you're submitting to places like Tachyon Publications and
Mhm.
Small Beer Press, which is where Kelly Link is, and uh, the like, I think there are some people that are willing to do that
Yeah, and I love
experimental
small
thing.
beer. I read all their stuff too.
Yeah, yeah, they're really good.
Mhm.
And okay, so I guess we've covered your media, the length and breadth. Was who were the writers when you started reading from Tachyon and other such
Mhm.
places? Who were the ones who really gave you um, got your blood running to say, "Oh, I
Mhm.
want to do this stuff"?
Yeah. Well, like I said, Kelly Link, Helen
Right.
Oyeyemi, fairy tale retellings are my jam. So I really liked reading her stuff. There were a couple of Michael Swanwick stories in some of those Tachyon anthologies that I really just couldn't get enough of.
Swanwick is a treasure.
Mhm, definitely. Peter S. Beagle, I've been reading all of his stuff that Tachyon puts out, and I really enjoy reading that. Um,
I believe he's working on new stuff now that he's gotten past some legal barriers that were facing him.
yeah,
He's
yeah.
he's
I
gotten over those.
I heard all that, and I'm really happy for him,
Yeah,
and happy that he's found such a nice home in Tachyon. It
yeah.
seems like the editions they put out of his books are just gorgeous and fun. Theodora Goss, I was reading a lot of her when I first started, and then I got to work with her in my MFA, which was really, really cool.
Oh, okay, yeah.
Yeah.
Stone Coast, that makes sense.
Karen Joy Fowler,
Mhm.
Octavia Butler.
Duh.
Yeah.
Yeah,
That's an obvious one. Ursula K. Le Guin, there's another obvious one.
yeah, yeah. I met Le Guin twice, had her no, I met her once, had her on twice. Octavia 7 times.
Mm.
Very, very proud of that.
Yeah, that's great.
6 or 7 times, also in the reading series, the New York Review of Science Fiction Readings. Uh, both Le Guin and Butler.
Yeah, that's
Uh,
great.
Now, as I said, one of my first bosses at WBAI included Joanna Russ
Mhm.
and Samuel R. Delaney, so
Yeah, I have a Joanna Russ book and a Samuel R. Delaney book on my shelf. I haven't read them yet, but I'm eager to. It's just that TBR pile.
yeah. But you want to talk about a book that has no clear 3-act structure or anything like that, and doesn't follow anything like what you have ever read, Dahlgren,
Mhm.
Dhalgren. That will do it for you.
Mhm. That's one of the ones that I have.
Yeah, it's a great novel. It's a book that will be studied still in 100 years.
Yeah.
So uh, very,
Recommending it.
more
Yeah.
than. It's not an easy read, largely for nobody has read anything like that before.
Mhm.
It's very new, uh, and his style was very original.
When I picked it up, it kind of felt like it was the Ulysses of sci-fi.
Yeah,
James
but
Joyce. Yeah.
yeah, yeah. But there certainly are comparisons to be made,
Mhm.
also with Gravity's Rainbow
Mhm.
and things like that. But comparing it to Joyce is fair, and I don't think that Chip would do anything but glow
Mhm.
when he hears that. For listeners, Samuel R. Delaney prefers Chip Delaney
Mm.
as a thing. And, well, there's another story about his being called Sammy, which a few people get away with. But it's too long a story for our venue right now.
Mm.
What are you working on at this time, aside from getting the novels published?
Yeah, so yeah, I just finished revisions of this horror novel that I'm sending out now. And so after that, I'm a little bit tired.
Yeah, so we're gonna take a break from prose
Yeah.
for
Yeah, maybe
a
just a
day.
second. I do have some revisions on a horror mermaid short story I need to get to, and I've got a body horror arcade story that I started
Ooh,
that I need to finish. And
yeah.
other than that, I'm starting to think about maybe writing my own visual novel.
Oh, that would be interesting.
Yeah, so I wanna learn some programming, both so it will benefit me in my day job and so I could put out some indie visual novels. I think that'd be really fun.
Yeah, and, I guess those are starting to become real popular. I'm hoping that the success of the Sandman TV series will spur some people on into more visual graphic novels of
Mhm.
merit, because I find so many of them without merit.
Oh,
I'm very
yeah.
cynical about them.
You know what I found in terms of comics and graphic novels is I'm really enjoying Tom King. Have you read any Tom King?
I have not.
He works for DC and Marvel, but he takes the superheroes and sometimes he takes like ones that really aren't talked about very often. And
Mhm.
he writes these really brilliant, very polarizing takes on these beloved superheroes where he explores their neuroses and their depression and like the little bits of evil in their personality, and a lot of comics fans hate him for that. They're
Mhm.
like, you're ruining my beloved superhero, but I love it. I love it so.
Yeah, well, I mean, but, that's what you're supposed to do if you're,
Mhm.
stretching out and experimenting with that and all that. I've had s so many heroes, beloved people that, other people have tried to ruin, and with the exception of killing them off sorry. No, but he didn't do that,
Yeah.
and for people who have no idea what I'm talking about, leave it that way. One day you're going to watch the thing that I'm talking about, and you'll know what I'm talking about. But, yeah, it's what people are supposed to do. I, on the other hand, I don't care for things like The Boys, because you can go just a little too far with the body horror and the killing of superheroes, and it's but it's exceedingly popular. I'm not going
Yeah.
to say they shouldn't be doing. Obviously, they should be doing it. They should be doing more of it. I will be not watching it.
I do love takedowns of superheroes, but okay, I did watch a little bit of The Boys, and I can deal with the body horror, and I can deal with some darkness. But then they got to there's a scene in there where the poor guy that I mean, not poor, he's kind of an asshole, but he talks to fish, and they make him eat this octopus live. And at that point,
They just
as
stole that from Old Boy.
did they? Well, I couldn't
Yes, it's
handle
it's a Korean movie,
it.
and it's a scene out of a well-known Korean movie that, in fact, was remade by Spike Lee,
Oh, okay. Well,
but without
I turned it off
octopus.
at that point.
Yeah, it's a lot of people consider that one of the grossest scenes in
Mm,
movies. I think it would challenge Tarantino. So,
yeah,
uh, so yeah, that's not original. It's literally eating a live octopus
yeah. Well,
in a
so many
movie.
ideas.
Yeah,
Right, right.
and which is a quasi-genre movie.
Okay. Yeah.
So
Well, I won't be watching that one either because I can't handle it.
yeah, yeah, exactly. And again, that doesn't mean they shouldn't be making it. It's
Yeah.
I support more and more and more. So as long as the good stuff is coming out, and we have uh, been lucky in the last few years, even from before the pandemic, been getting some brilliant writing and visual stuff. Not so much, and before that, before the pandemic, great movies like Arrival or
Oh,
Her,
yeah.
which,
Yeah.
neither of which broke box offices but got well-deserved political acclaim. So
Yeah. I loved both of those. I'm watching Severance right now. And
I started it
mhm.
and I'm not continuing because I can't afford every service. And
Yeah.
you
I
know,
I cancel one and, start the other one and watch whatever I want there and then cancel that one. And so I
yeah,
go back and forth.
yeah, I'm trying to do that.
Yeah.
Uh, but it can be tough balancing. And
Mhm.
now that they're all sort of imploding,
Yeah.
we'll see how long this era will last.
Yeah, they'll have to figure out some way to bundle them, but
Yeah,
talk about, excellent sci-fi writing be on TV. Severance is I'm really enjoying it. I'm not
yeah,
finished yet. I'm, 3 episodes to the end, so my
yeah,
opinion could change, but
yeah. Well, yeah, we'll see. But most people I know who followed it all the way liked it,
yeah.
and I've just seen the first 2 episodes. Uh, and one of the interesting things is I found it very literary. I found that yes, this premise was familiar to me,
Mhm.
um, and in literature, because there is a premise like that in real life. That you work for certain companies, they give you a phone.
Mhm.
You have to keep your personal life on that phone completely separate from the business life, and they don't want you to have a different phone. They want you
Mm,
to use only the one, which
mm.
means they can see everything you do.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
And that's been true for some years. And so Severance came from that. But I also found a story from the 1940s that had a premise like that.
Hmm. What was
So
it called? Do you remember?
I don't remember. I can tell you that the author was Murray Leinster.
Okay. Cool.
Most people would call him Leinster, as I always did, Leinstr. His real name is Will Jenkins.
Mm,
And his daughter, Billy Stallings, who is still with us, bless her, um, said, no, it's Leinster. He named it after Leinster County in Ireland.
okay.
And you go to Ireland and you say Leinster,
They'll
you're
laugh
going to
at
be
you.
you're going to be thrown out of the pub.
Yeah.
So, So, and by the way, if anybody wants to read just one Murray Leinster story that describes our present today, but was written in the early 40s, read a short story called Call Me Joe, which is basically about his iPad. It really is scary.
Huh.
It's scary how, and early 1940s. But which of your short let's talk about the new book. Let's talk about
Yeah.
Glorious Fiends. Um how many words is it? It's not he said, holding it up to the radio.
It's short. Yeah, it's a little novella. It's a
Yeah,
fun read.
yeah, it is. It
Yeah.
is. And despite the body horror, it did not dissuade me at all.
Oh, that's good. Yeah,
Yeah, there
it's
are
a
there
little bit
are moments.
gross. If you don't like gross stuff, I wouldn't pick it up, but
Yeah, I'm not a big fan of grossness,
yeah.
but if I've been carried to that point, well,
Mhm.
a good writer, namely you perhaps, can carry me across that threshold.
Yeah. Yeah, and I was inspired by a lot of the '80s horror that I've been watching lately, with the
Yeah.
practical effects. So
Oh,
it's all very gooey and, it's gross, but it's gross in a little bit of a campy way. It doesn't really feel like it's super real, and so that's kinda what I was going for.
yeah, so
Great
the
story.
Cronenberg effect.
Yeah.
I
Yeah, I
think
watch I watch a lot of Cronenberg. I have some issues with his portrayal of female characters, but I do like
that,
a Cronenberg film
like,
quite a bit.
why am I not surprised to hear you say that? He would probably not be surprised to hear you say it.
Yeah.
So, but
But yeah, yeah, I wanted to write something fun. I wasn't having a lot of fun writing, and, so I kinda just decided to go where the energy was, and
mhm,
the energy was with this character, Roxanne, who's a vampire who, she has a lot of bloodlust, and she's also trying to resurrect her friends, and in order to do that, she has to make a deal with the guardian of the underworld, and he wants her to send him 3 other monsters in
mhm.
exchange for the souls that she stole from him, and
It
he
seems
also says,
impossible.
"You're not allowed to eat and you're not allowed to send me too many innocent people, like, things are getting out of control down in my underworld, so don't kill too many other people while you're on this journey." So, basically, he's trying to trick her because he knows she has a lot of bloodlust and she's gonna kill
Mhm,
a lot of people,
yeah.
and, so it's kind of about, her trying to be faithful to her friends and at the same time dealing with her selfish nature and her
A
inner struggles.
Yeah, a difficult balance.
Yeah,
Yeah,
but
and
I loved writing her. She's a lot of fun.
yeah, do you foresee using her in the future?
I'd like to. Yeah. I mean, I want to make sure that other people like her before I really delve into another story on her behalf. But I did kind of leave it a little bit open ended where I could continue on if I
Yeah.
wanted to. And eventually I'd like to write a novel with her in it.
Mm, okay.
Something longer where I got
Yeah.
to explore the world a bit more.
Can you imagine an adaptation of it?
Oh, yeah, definitely.
Because I could. I was, usually when I read something, I can hear it being
Mhm.
audio based, but I could also see it.
Yeah. Well, I
I
think because it's inspired by Hammer horror and it's inspired by '80s horror movies, for me, it was very cinematic, whereas usually the stuff I'm writing, I'm not seeing it so much as I'm, hearing the language as I'm creating it. But this one for me is very visual.
Yeah, now, you clearly succeeded because I am not a fan of, the gore films. I used to call it gornography,
Yeah.
where the whole point of it was the gore. The gore wasn't like a shock, or it wasn't Hitchcock or anything like that. It was like, when are we going to get to the cabin in the woods, huh? you know, and who are the most innocent people who are going to take off all their clothes because they're going to be slaughtered right after that. That's how it works.
Mm-hmm.
And I was never a fan of the Hammer films or all that until I met Christopher Lee. He
Yeah.
was he was doing a tour for the James Bond movie he was in. And oh my God, talk about a charming, wonderful gentleman. And that,
He's so good on screen.
oh, he's so good in person.
Hmm.
He was just, we were discussing opera. We were discussing because he wanted to be an opera singer. He wanted to be a
Yeah.
Wagnerian,
Huh.
but his studies took him somewhere else. And once he started doing television and movies and stuff like that, and some of his favorite stuff was being on the TV series The Avengers,
Oh, okay.
and which he did twice, and only one of which I think survives. But so after that interview, and long before he played Saruman in Lord of the Rings, uh, and yes, people, Saruman, I'm sticking to it. Uh, and the after that, just to watch his performances, I would watch some of those movies.
He's such a good Dracula.
Yeah, but he was a pretty good Sherlock Holmes.
Mm-hmm. I haven't watched those, but
One. Has he done more than one? No, and he doesn't play Sherlock Holmes. What am I saying? Peter Cushing played Sherlock Holmes. He was Sir Henry Baskerville.
oh, okay.
So,
Cool.
guess which movie?
Yeah.
And that is a Hammer film.
Okay. Yeah, I didn't know that.
Yeah,
Yeah, I've mostly seen their horror films. I haven't seen their, sci-fi. They did a couple sci-fi.
a couple. Yeah. And now somebody's going to say that wasn't a Hammer film, but it was Hammer like. It was that era, that
Yeah.
that blend of color
Hmm.
and that mood.
Yeah.
Yeah.
My favorite Hammer ones that I discovered were the ones that you don't hear talked about very much, like the Gorgon. I thought
Oh,
that
I
one was
may
really
have
fun.
seen that one. Yes,
I
because the
liked,
title drew me in.
yeah, me too. Dr. Jekyll and Sister Hyde. That one. I think I like a lot of horror that doesn't really make sense if you poke it too hard. Because
Hmm.
for me, like the poking is kind of the fun part.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. I
Yeah.
can understand that.
My friends and I watch a lot of B movies, a lot of bad horror.
Okay. Yeah. I guess my favorite B horror movie falls into none of those categories, and that would be The Fearless Vampire Killers.
Okay, I haven't seen that one.
Oh my! Definitely catch that one. Directed by Roman Polanski, starring Roman Polanski and Sharon Tate.
Oh.
Oh yes,
Wow. All right.
yeah. So it's the one time they were together, and it's probably the best movie she made. Not that she had that much opportunity to develop her career,
Mhm.
but it's a funny movie. There isn't a horror trope in there. And I will give away the best scene in the movie. It's where Polanski and really the lead character, I'm forgetting the actor's name, but he was also the grandfather in Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory.
Mm.
And they go down in the castle to where there's a ball and this beautiful mirrored ballroom. And there are hundreds of creatures, people in there, and they take a look, and they're the only two in the mirror.
Yeah, that's cool.
Yeah,
That's a cool
that
fact.
it's like the only visual effect that they added, but they did every last trope. you can imagine, and usually turned it into something funny. And there are some genuinely scary moments, and but it's also slapstick comedy.
Mhm. Okay. Yeah, it sounds interesting.
Polanski not being known for slapstick comedy, but at that point he was still married.
Hmm.
So,
Hmm.
well, I'm sorry to say that our time is about up, but I'm also going to direct people because we're going to be doing a more open-ended thing that will be primarily visual. This is primarily radio, but there's a visual component that we will make available on YouTube, Facebook, and apparently a new thing called Amazon Live.
Oh, I didn't know about it.
And it's very new. It's as in very new. And I'm going to try that out. But you and the team, we have a date. Very difficult to find a date in October because pretty much every single Tuesday, we were usually Tuesdays at 7 p.m., is a major Jewish holiday.
Hmm.
It's
Mhm.
the high holiday season. And then if we go to the third week, we would be opposite another reading series,
Hmm.
the KGP Fantastic Fiction series run by Ellen Datlow and Matt Kressel.
Mhm.
Talk about rewriting fairy tales. Uh, Ellen Datlow's series with Terry Windling.
Oh, yeah.
Those books are
So good.
they're so good. So I think we're going. I think we chose the 11th, did we not?
Yeah, I think
Yeah,
so.
yeah. So October 11th at 7 p.m. New York time. You are in Texas.
Yeah, so Central Time, 1
So,
hour earlier.
yeah, and for people on the left coast, 4 o'clock, but they're all archived. They're all viewable anytime. But you can't ask, well, you can ask questions. If it's not live, you just won't get an answer.
Unless something spooky happens.
Well, yeah, there could always be a first. But we do have to ask the question that is probably in your life the most asked question. Do I even have to ask it? Your name.
Yes.
Your name.
My name
Your
as
name, your last name.
is it real?
Well, first, what does it mean to you? And then second, is it real? Yes.
It is real. It is my birth name.
That is wonderful. That's
Yeah,
wonderful.
it's German. It's supposed to be Stuffelbein, then it was
Ah,
Americanized.
yeah. Well, yeah, mine, Freund. Did
Mhm.
there are many, many, many people who have Americanized Freund to Friend.
Mhm.
Freundish became friendly, like Fred Friendly of CBS,
Mhm.
who ran CBS News for 90 years or something like that. His real name was Freundlich. The one that always got me was John Forsyth. His name's John Freund.
Okay, yeah, that's quite a difference.
And how do you go from one ethnic name to another ethnic name that have nothing to do with each other? But there you have it. But
Yeah.
Stuffelbein?
Yeah, Stuffelbein, and,
Stuffelbein. Of course.
I don't really know, what it means. I had a German-speaking friend at one point tell me that it was maybe, like, I think he said stump might be somewhere in there, so he was saying it might be, like, one who hides behind a stump or, stump leg or something like that, and
Hmm.
both of those were funny to me, but I don't know for sure.
Funny, but I think if it had that quasi put down thing,
It
even for
sounds
Germans.
like an insult.
Yeah, it does. So I have a feeling that it might be stump, but it might be more like somebody standing on something speaking.
Yeah.
Yeah, people stump for others for election means they promote people.
Hmm. Who knows? It's a mystery, and I get comments about it all the time, which I love.
Yeah, well, yeah, and it's a great name. And
Yeah.
for those people looking for the book and your collection of short stories entitled,
Where You Linger.
yeah, that's a great title.
Yeah.
And future efforts, including short stories published in all kinds of magazines. Um, Joe, okay, Bonnie, you can figure out Stufflebeam as it sounds. It's phonetic. Joe is uh, without an E, just like in Little Women.
It is. It's from The Little Women.
Of course, of course. I love that last Greta Gerwig version.
Oh, yeah, it was great.
It was brilliant. It was
Mhm.
brilliant. So, thank you so much. I'll be seeing you online in about 2 or 3 weeks, and this will be broadcast this coming Monday, I should mention, unless something happens. And things happen, by the way. Our broadcast schedule goes awry. But in theory, this will be broadcast September 26th, 2022, and then be archived indefinitely.
Awesome.
And I'll
Sounds
be
great.
uploading it. So thank you, Bonnie.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks for having
Okay.
me.
Okay.